Today we're going to be talking about Audemars Piguet Quantième Perpetual. Ladies and gents, welcome to Watch Brothers London, first video on YouTube. I know usually you're meant to do an introduction video, but we've skipped that for this, and I'm really excited and looking forward to talking through this wonderful collection with my friend and great collector, Watches and Guinness.
Hey guys, I'm Seamus from Watches and Guinness, and I'm really happy to introduce this collection of AP Perpetuals.
Awesome, well, thank you so much for getting them all out for me today. I know we've had a look at these in the past, but it's great to see them all laid out.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see them all laid out like this.
Yeah, awesome. So a bit of history for those people. I know there's a lot of articles online, and we've actually written a couple together, and also with Kiaka. Kiaka 1970 is his new Instagram. You should check him out if you haven't already. And Tom as well at Singapore Watch Club and Waiko at Revolution have done some wonderful bits on this watch. So we're really looking forward to talking through these. And we should probably start with the first one. Do you want to?
Yeah, we should start with the first one. So this is probably the revolutionary perpetual thin calendar from AP. It was released kind of during the quartz crisis, and really, I think a lot of people give it credit for saving AP as a brand. I mean, there's a lot of these watches, and you know the reason I think why they've stood the test of time is they're a perfect blend of like elegance, also functionality, and I think pretty revolutionary as well at the time. It's an automatic watch, so it winds itself, but it's also an ultra thin watch, and it's a perpetual calendar. It was the world's thinnest perpetual calendar at the time, and this is a lovely example of an early version of it. So it's reference 5548 BA. And you can tell some of the distinct features of this watch. It's got a lovely, slightly old-fashioned dial compared to the newer models, which is a beautiful kind of opaline color to it, with painted on as numerals and also a small AP font. This one as well is characterized a really early version by just a Swiss only marking on the dial, yeah, which is pretty nice. There's a lot of watches of this type made in yellow gold, and by a lot it was probably around, I think, 7,000 or something in total. And what's beautiful about this watch is I think there's many variations and permutations of it. Here's a classical configuration of yellow gold with a white dial. But AP, I guess at the time, really tried to express individuality, and you can see there's a lot of other various dial types, permutations, and metal types as well, which is pretty interesting.
Awesome, awesome. So this was introduced around 1978, I think.
Yes, 1978. It was actually after the Royal Oak. So the Royal Oak was in 1972. So that's 50 years is coming up next year. This one was after the Royal Oak, but interestingly, it's got the same movement that was used in the Royal Oak, which is a pretty, it was a pretty revolutionary movement at the time. It was the JLC 920. That movement was kind of made by AP in conjunction with Vacheron and Patek, but by JLC. So it was a Jaeger-LeCoultre Ebauche. And I think it's important for people to understand when they think of vintage watches, and particularly Swiss watches, that really the watch itself is not made by one house. I mean, it was this collection of small workshops, and I think that kind of combined approach to making watches is an important feature of Swiss watches, which shouldn't be overlooked. So when you look at an AP watch, and there's a lot of hype now about in-house movements and what have you, but really back how they were used to made was the movement was made by one house, and it might be a small chateau somewhere making the movement, and that would have been used in various other watches who had different specialities. Like the perpetual module here, for example, is not necessarily an AP perpetual module. It's a Dubras de Brasse module, and that, from my mind, is a pretty very nice perpetual module. But it's not just the only one. You can see for example, Vacheron and Patek use the same movement in certain watches, but they have different perpetual modules, for example. So the perpetual module in this one is pretty clean. It's got like just 12 months, which basically has a unique kind of movement mechanism to factor in the leap year.
Awesome. I think some really interesting history on this watch as well. So before this, AP had the 5516, and that was made, I think, in around 12 pieces in 3 different series. But it wasn't a mass-produced piece. So this was like the first one that they really
This is the
started
first
to churn out.
mass-produced piece after the Royal Oak, I guess. So they really needed a good automatic movement to drive the watch, and you know the JLC 920 has stood the test of time, and there's a reason why that is the case. It's a great movement. It's used in many watches, including Royal Oak, the first Nautilus, Vacheron 222, and Vacheron still make it today in conjunction with AP. But it was a mass-produced movement, and like I said, it stood the test of time. And these perpetual modules are also mass-produced. Now, mass production is not on the level of what we consider these days as mass production. It's still, you know, relatively in the hundreds of watches a year. They were not of the old type of perpetual modules that would have been like 10 watches per year.
Good.
So we stepped up production numbers, but like they're still relatively well contained. And the success of this watch, I think, kind of jolted Patek into doing something similar as well. And they use a very nice perpetual module as well, but the driving movement of that is something that they got from Universal Genève. So again, it's similar concept to what AP had done here, is take something that they know works and build on it and make it something more mass produced, but still have the kind of design features and, you know, the permutations that give it a little bit of character, which I think AP are probably the most successful at. So this is the kind of start of this perpetual calendar craze that all of the other big watch manufacturers got on. But I think for my money, this is, you know, the OG, the start, and you know, has some of the best and, like, I think more interesting permutations as well.
Definitely. And here you've got a lovely example on the bracelet as well. So again, another Swiss dial, early model in all gold, very Miami Vice style.
Gangster.
I think this is a gangster watch. This is very much one of my favorites actually that you have. And so Swiss only dial to a Swiss made dial is commonly the 255.
Yep.
48.
25548.
25548, which was around, what was it, like 1982 to 84, around that kind of area.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, they also started to introduce another reference, right? Which I think you have a couple of examples here. The 25657.
Yes.
Would you talk me through some of these really lovely examples that you have on here?
Yes. So the 25657 is, I guess it's taken the success of the earlier version and kind of built on that. What's interesting is that the dial is different. It's a differently made dial as well, and we have two nice examples here. One in rose gold, one in yellow gold with a very beautiful mother of pearl dial. But you can see that the subdials are sunken in this version compared to these beautiful painted original version dials that are not sunken. So the dial is very different. Now, I conjecture that it was probably easier to make these dials in a production environment, and it certainly made a lot more of these type. But I mean, there's obviously very similar features to both of the dials, but enough of a difference for it to be interesting for collectors, at least, to have two of the references. And yes, again here, you know, we have one in rose gold, which is fairly rare. I mean, the most common metal used was yellow gold. So to my mind, you know, from a collecting perspective, having a interesting either dial type or metal type makes it just a little bit more interesting for me. And you know, it's like a collector's dream, because you can, you know, I mean, the kind of the collecting journey never really ends. So it's quite a nice permutations involved, which, you know, I think are very interesting.
That's great. And as well, you can see the case kind of evolve throughout the production as well, and you've got some lovely examples of both. So
yeah, so this case type is the earlier case type, and it's actually on a lovely integrated bracelet, which is a JPE bracelet, pretty unique. Who's a kind of master of metal bracelets, and you can see this bracelet has stood the test of time and it hangs beautifully. It's really a unique craft in itself that again speaks to what I mentioned earlier, that the watch is not necessarily AP only. It's got other craftsmen putting into it. And here the bracelet is a lovely example of that. But you can see the case type, the pushers, which allow you to change the date and the month, and basically when the watch has been off the wrist for a while, allowed you to reset the watch to the current time and date. They are slightly protruded in this case type. Really that's probably something that was like a feature in the earlier case types, because it was just a little bit cruder.
You can see it on this one as well.
Yeah, you can see it on the earlier version, yes, on this one here, and it probably not great from a water resistance perspective, because effectively the pusher is just protruding out of this hole in the case side. Obviously that was something that with time they refined the case types, and it's quite interesting to me that there has been a kind of drift in the case designs, and again it speaks to there's an individual crafts man making these cases, and where they choose to put the engraving markings. Is it on the lugs? Is it on the back of the case? Is it where it is quite unique, and something that I think people like about, for example, Lange watches with a unique balance cock engraving. You can find the unique marks of the craftsman in some of these watches as well, which I think is quite interesting.
Definitely.
But the newer case type, this version here, you can see the pushers are quite flush with the case. It's just more of an integrated pusher into the case, so it's not as protruded, and the case is kind of sculpted around the pusher, as it were, rather than have the pushing protruding.
Yeah, and the case back as well. It's much smoother.
Case back is much smoother.
Later case.
Again, different hallmark zones. If you want to get into that type of thing, there's all sorts of layers to the onion, and the lugs as well. So the different newer case type is something that we probably see in these 4 or 5 watches here, it's just been a progression, and that probably ends. I think the latest watches would be this one here, which is a nice example of a skeleton watch, but it's got factory-made bezel diamonds and also dial diamonds. But you can see it's got like uppercase Audemars Piguet, which was a transition that they made in the later case types, and just the position of the engravings and how it's engraved and where it's marked is quite different. Again, beautifully made and manufactured, and you can see the skeletonization on something like this is quite unique. But again, I conjecture that was not done in-house by Audemars Piguet. It probably was done skeletonized externally by some master craftsman or a company that specialized in this kind of skeletonization. And again, you don't see this in the kind of more recent skeleton watches made by AP. They call it skeleton, which they are, but they're not as engraved as beautifully as this. And
yeah, I mean that's completely.
It's a different level. It's a different level. It's got a lot more character. It's got a lot more. To my mind, it's got a lot more collectability. It speaks. It's got a warmth of vintage kind of
definitely
character to it that I think is great.
So not only do you have a lovely diamond example, which I think we know is my favourite, but you also have, can I call it a plain, but skeletonized platinum, lovely QP here, which is an early one, right? And then you also have a later yellow gold example.
So there's a couple of different variations. I mean, the stock variations are these white dial yellow gold types, and obviously the more less kind of frequent variations are these skeleton types, but there are some references. So this is the earlier reference type, and this would be a later reference type, as would this one be, and you can see that in the lugs and the case as well.
Yeah.
And you can see the small AP on this one as well, a small AP here, but an uppercast AP here. A lot of people don't really think the diamonds on the dial and bezel it maybe is a bit too much, but I think if you're going skeleton anyway, I mean, it's not
exactly.
It's not a big leap to go. And
I mean, those people are crazy. You've got to like a little bit of bling.
One of 9, and this would be like probably one of 70, something like that.
Yeah, so some really rare pieces here. This is lovely to see. Awesome. So we've covered a load of these lovely dress watch types, but I see you've also brought along some really lovely oaks as well, royal oaks.
Yeah.
So you got some early examples as well.
Yes.
Maybe we'll start with that one. I think that is actually one of my favorites.
Yeah, so I mean, like you mentioned, the Royal Oak design, the case design was actually before these perpetual dress watches. So it's like 1972.
So quite a bit before then, actually.
Quite a bit before.
6 years.
Certainly at the time a revolutionary case design, and I think matching the two of them was like probably a big thing for AP and a big thing for me personally. It's just got that unique combination of design, which is quite a beautiful design, very unique design, but also again with a very unique combination of a perpetual module with the JLC automatic movement.
So it really like speaks to their brand then. So they've
Yeah,
got their
so
iconic
you basically
model
put
and
everything
then
in one watch, which
Yeah.
is insane. And for a long time they were quite overlooked. I'm not necessarily sure why. They were also always the watch that I was interested in because, for example, a Nautilus would have been a later derivative design,
Yeah.
trying to compete with this, and also even the perpetual calendars from Patek, which are beautiful watches, were also a competition of trying
Definitely.
to save some market share for Patek versus these perpetuals. So have that combination of the unique Royal Oak design with the perpetual module and the JLC movement is quite beautiful. Here we have a nice example of a yellow gold, again with a mop dial, a white mop dial.
So that is really, really stunning.
So this is reference 25654. But yeah, it's got all of the features you would want probably. It doesn't have a leap year. Some of the later models, which I'll show you, have a leap year indicator. Not necessarily a difference, but it's certainly an aesthetic wise, it's just a clearer dial, having less kind of clutter on it.
I think for me as well, this one is like my dream configuration. So you've got a no leap year indicator, the small font.
Yep.
AP logo as well.
Now this would not be the kind of classic one. I think the classic one would be this in steel.
Yeah.
But it's a yellow gold example, so precious metals, quite a bit of heft on the wrist. And yeah, the mop dial is pretty special, and in the light it's got a beautiful iridescence to it, which from my it wears very nice. So I like to wear my watches. It's not something that I keep hidden away, so it's definitely one of the ones that I like to wear because it's just got that nice combination of iridescence on the dial.
Yeah, what I love here is the focus.
Yeah.
Like you really know what you like, and you've just collected such a lovely example of a lot of them. Yeah. And I see you've got what have we got here? We've got a steel.
Yeah, so we have a steel and platinum. So this is a 25820 SP. So SP, steel and platinum. So it's got a beautiful polished, it's not satin finished or a brush finish. It's like smooth, polished finish, platinum bezel. But also the links are made of platinum as well. So it's kind of a nice combination of metals aesthetically to look at, and again it plays with the light quite nicely. But the interesting thing, for me at least, is that the steel Royal Oaks, which I'm wearing a normal steel Royal Oak on the wrist, it actually wears very light because it's a steel watch. But this is a mixture of metals, so it's quite a bit heavier. And I think from a Goldilocks perspective, it's right in the middle of the steel, which is a little bit too light, and the precious metals here, you got a yellow gold and a full platinum one, which we'll look at later. And this one kind of lies in the middle. So it's very, very nice watch to wear from a weight perspective. It's also got a unique winding rotor, basically just a different color to what you normally see. And another feature that I think is quite nice about it is that it's got this beautiful mixture of metal colors on the dial, but also it's got the classic tapisserie dial as well.
Lovely.
So a beautiful watch. Scratch magnet, but beautiful watch.
I was going to ask, but it looks pristine, so
yes,
it seems to have been worn very well.
Yep.
Awesome. And then the final piece is a bit of a cherry on the top.
Yeah, this one is a bit of a heft to it. So it's a full platinum 25820 PT, and this one has a mop dial, a blue mop dial. So a bit different from the white mop dials. It's a blue mop dial. So again, it's got like a nice iridescence to it. Yeah, I mean it weighs a lot, so it's like something that
it really does.
Yeah,
that is heavy. Oh, it's lovely. A lovely bit of heft on the wrist there.
But again, the white metal, I think probably for these sport watches I favor. For the dress watches, I think different metal types will work with different aesthetics. But I think the sports watch having white metal is quite nice sold off.
Amazing. And in terms of wrist time, which ones get the most?
For me, I like wearing this, so the SP quite a lot, just because of the weight factor. I also wear this PT quite a bit. The yellow gold one is like more special occasions. I wouldn't necessarily wear that to the office or anything like that. It just probably jumps out a bit too much. And these ones I wear very, very often because they're so under the radar. very elegant watches, fit under a dress cuff, have everything you would want really in terms of you know, the provenance, the history, the design, but it's really only something that you and somebody else who might, you know, have a bit more of a refined view of watches would understand or appreciate. So it's kind of a silent nod of approval, which I prefer, and something a bit more flashy.
Definitely, and actually on that, so we met through these watches, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote an article with a Kaka 1970, and we were talking about these watches, and then that's how we connected.
Yeah.
And yeah, little did I know that you had such a, you know, incredible collection, and you know, a far greater knowledge actually of all this, and it's been such a pleasure to, you know, actually learn alongside you with these watches.
Yeah, I mean, there's many layers to the onion, and I think there's a nice history, and you know, quite a bit out there on the internet, but quite a bit of like stuff that's got wrong as well. But yeah, from my perspective, there's a beautiful transition from the classic design of the Royal Oak, the movement that's used there, the provenance of that movement, where it's been used elsewhere, and you know how that has progressed all the way to like the very new models of the perpetual calendar. It's just a great story of watch making, I think, and you know, again, the design permutations are a collector's dream, because there's so many great designs, and you mentioned cacao, and you know, yeah, I mean, there's just beautiful combinations of variations out there that you can look to add to a collection, or you can start with very simple stuff, which, you know, has a timeless elegance to it, but also again, I think is sophisticated watch, and you know, a watch that would kind of speak to your understanding of the kind of watch market in general, I think.
Definitely. Before I forget as well, I want to thank Ashel, so Watch Rock and Turf, for lending us this lovely, very early example. I know you have one as well actually, but it's with AP right now, so he was very kind to lend us it. It's actually number 53 off production. I know yours is a really low 20s, is it as well?
It's number
production
20.
Number 20.
Yeah.
So talking about the different permutations, what isn't here that we'd love to have here? Where are we going next, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the classic combination of a white metal with a white dial, like so this one in rose gold with a white dial, a platinum version of that,
lovely.
Would be nice. You could also argue that some of the more interesting dial types with a white metal would be super interesting as well. So you could have platinum or white gold with maybe a guilloche dial, or a salmon dial would be beautiful. Super rare. I mean, they look great, but for my money, I think I would probably target something that's a little bit more under the radar, which would be just a platinum with white dial.
Lovely. Awesome. Thank you so much for showing me all this. Really, really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. For the viewers, how do they find you?
Oh, you can find me on Watches and Guinness on Instagram. A little bit more Watches than Guinness these days, but hopefully that'll change. So yeah, that's where you'll find me. Awesome.
Well, let us know in the comments which is your favourite piece, what you would like to wear out and about. Definitely interested in doing some more videos, so let us know if that's of interest to you. Thanks all, and hopefully see you soon.